Thank you everyone for joining us. Today we are cracking the preschool code with Ling from Baby Planner SG. We are unlocking the secrets to choosing the best preschool for your little one so that you can find the perfect fit for your family. In this masterclass, we'll dive deep into the process of figuring out your family's unique priorities and values step by step. Ling will guide you through creating a sensible shortlist of options, uncover interview techniques that will help you get to the heart of each school's philosophy, and provide valuable tips on what to observe during those all-important school tours. The important stuff. Okay, I do need to mention just some important things. The fact that Ling and myself, we bring as much evidence-based support as we possibly can, but neither of us are medically or legally trained. So given the subject of this talk, please don't take anything on this talk to overshadow or overtake any medical or legal advice that you either have sought or may seek in future. And a super quick moment just to introduce myself before I introduce the wonderful Ling. If you don't know me from Pregnant and Popped, which happens twice a year, or if you haven't seen me chatting away in the Pregnant and Popped village, I am Kathy Rougier. I am the founder of Empower and the curator of Pregnant and Popped. I'm also a certified postpartum and infant care doula, and that is where this whole ethos has come from, this bringing together a community to provide and empower mums on this transitional journey that they find themselves on. So as a postpartum and infant care doula, I typically provide feeding support, whether that's breast or bottle, physical and emotional recovery support, sleep essentials, and I work with mums and families throughout that fourth trimester and also that fifth trimester during that transition, back to work and sorting out what is life going to look like now that you're a mum of 1, 2, 3 or more. But this isn't about me. This is most definitely about Ling and the wonderful work she does with families at Baby Planner. Ling founded Baby Planner in 2019. Baby Planner is a one-stop maternity consultancy offering planning services alongside hands-on support and ongoing guidance. Ling's aim is to help parents avoid the overload of information and, dare we say it, consumerism caused by the sheer number of choices that are out there for new parents these days. Ling offers practical solutions, and as with so much of what we do with Pregnant and Popped, she empowers parents to meet their new baby's needs, their larger family needs, whilst preserving some of the most important aspects of their family lifestyles. So, without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I will let Ling share her screen, and I will hand over for the next empowering masterclass with Pregnant and Popped.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you so much for taking an hour of your precious time to join us. So, without further ado, I would like to dive straight in. We're actually going to be covering a brief introduction before we go deep into how to figure out your priorities, how to narrow down your search for a good infant or child care for your child, and then move on to how to best utilize the school visit. Lots to cover. So I'm not going to spend too much time here on the introduction, but I thought it'd be useful to share why I'm doing this masterclass. So my name is Ling, as you guys know by now, and like what Kathy shared, I do what I call a one-stop maternity consultant. So most of the time, I focus on helping parents prepare for their new addition to the family through running private prenatal classes in your own homes, as well as to be a stay-out confinement nanny, which is very similar to actually how Kathy supports families, where we journey with new parents through their toughest first months, help them get into a sustainable routine which meets the needs of everyone in the family, whether it's the new baby, any older siblings, and of course also each of the parents. So I am a mom of three. I have a 10-year-old boy, an 8-year-old girl, and another little boy who's coming to 5 this year. So yes, the picture on the screen is a little bit dated. It was taken 3 years ago now. So that's me. And I wanted to share that over the past 10 years, I have actually been a full-time working mom, full-time stay-home mom, part-time working mom, as well as an entrepreneur. So lots of permutations and combinations, partly because my children have had changing needs, right, through these ages as they have gone by. So I have put my kids under care of relatives in full day childcare, in half day kindergartens, and also tried my hand at homeschooling them for certain periods of time. So, today's class is one where I have put together some of my experiences personally, as well as the experiences of some of my clients as I have journeyed with them through their thought processes of, considering various types of care arrangements through the different stages of parenthood. So whether, all of them have gone through their journeys, and I would like to share some of those with you tonight. Infant or childcare centers, right, is one of the most common arrangements in Singapore. So tonight we shall focus on that. All right. So every family has actually different circumstances and different priorities. These considerations change throughout different stages of life. So from my own experience, as you could tell, like the idea of being a stay-home mom, part-time work, full-time work, I actually went through various permutations more than once throughout the last 10 years because circumstances change. So that's actually my first message to you tonight, everybody, which is that life circumstances never stay the same, whether it is the needs of your children don't stay the same or your own preferences and priorities also change. And so care arrangements is not like a one decision for one time, but it's fluid and can continue to change throughout their lives, right? So don't think too much about like, oh, this is once and for all. If I choose infant care now, then this will set my child's life for a long term. No, not true. You can always change your mind later on as well if something fits better. So generally for kids aged from 0 to 12 years old, there are 6 childcare options listed on the slide now, right? So there are various considerations to determine which of the 6 options listed make the most sense for your present ideal childcare arrangement. And today we will only be focusing on number 6, infant or childcare centers, which by ECDA requirements must offer childcare support from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday. And some have the option also to offer half-day support on Saturdays. So what constitutes the perfect fit? Some people are looking for a professional place. Some people are looking for a caring place. Sometimes that may seem a little bit contrary to one another, right? Usually professional has a certain idea that it might be a little bit more distance, a little bit more professional. Whereas a nurturing, caring place, you kind of think of, oh, a place where there's lots of hugs and kisses going around, that kind of thing. So everyone is actually looking for something different. And so what then is the perfect preschool? And the answer is it's different for every family. Okay, so no, you didn't come to this masterclass to get a silly, like one line answer like that, which sounds like a cop out. So let's break down, right, the general categories when thinking about what would make a perfect fit. So, first of all, curriculum and pedagogy is usually something that most parents are concerned about when they look for a good preschool. In general, the teaching philosophy and approaches in the school must resonate with the family values. The center's processes and operations also do need to ensure that everyone feels safe, whether it's the child or actually the caregivers, the parents feel like their children are safe, feel like it's a safe environment. So this is where actually it's different for every family because different philosophies, different families have different philosophies. So, for example, if certain families would like a more respectful approach, for example, where they would like a school that allows their children to express themselves very freely, then that would be the kind of approach that they're looking for an ideal school. Whereas another family could be looking for a much more, for example, disciplined approach. and they're looking for a school which will enforce discipline and teach discipline to their children. So that would be to them a perfect fit. So this is where I think teaching and pedagogy and curriculum would actually differ a lot from family to family. But in a general sense, they all fall under this category called curriculum pedagogy approach. Okay, the next general category that most parents, caregivers should look for when they are considering a preschool would be the culture and staff of the school. Right. So the culture in general would need to be a nurturing one where the learning environment is suitable for their child's preferred way of learning. The quality of the training of the teachers need to be clear enough or good enough to ensure that whatever the school is trying to teach will be effective. And then also the teachers to children ratio would affect the attention span the teachers have to the children and also the children have towards the teachers. And also finally for culture and staff, turnover rates actually affect a lot of familiarity. So for young children, especially under the age of 6, familiarity is something very important. Routines and consistency would usually contribute a lot to how safe the child feels whenever they go to school. So turnover rates would be something to look out for as well in general. Next up would be sensible logistics. So when we talk about sensible logistics, there are two main aspects we are referring to. Firstly, age appropriate rest is very important for your child's development and well-being. So whatever school that we choose that would be a perfect fit for our family would allow our kids to be able to get ideally the restorative sleep they need at night and not have to, wake up earlier in the morning than your usual lifestyle before you started school. And also, if possible, for some parents, the center should prioritize age-appropriate rest for all kids. So for some parents, that would mean appropriate nap times or enough nap time. And then for some families, it would mean not having nap time because maybe their kids are actually a little bit older and have already dropped their naps. And so nap time is like a waste of time in school. So that would be the perfect fit for their family if it could meet these resting needs of the child. Remember that going to preschool is a daily affair, twice a day, in fact. So sending and picking should not be a cause of stress on a daily basis. So that would be a perfect fit if it doesn't cause you stress. And finally, cost, right? So the perfect fit must be one which fits into your budget that your family already has because it should not be something that causes financial strain and stress such that it actually isn't sustainable. Okay, so I would say in general, these are the 4 aspects of what constitutes the perfect fit. Okay, so let's move on, right? Any questions or responses, please type it in the chat. But if not, we're going to move on to how to actually start your search. The slide now actually says to start with logistics. Are you surprised? Okay, because this is actually the most practical starting point. Because actually in Singapore, there are so many infant and childcare centers around Singapore that and most parents are actually both full-time working parents. So starting with logistics is actually the most practical place to start. Okay, so when we do our shortlist, the approach should be to prioritize sending and picking your kids because this is a daily thing, as I mentioned. So we should begin by searching for all available infant and childcare centers around either our home or our workplace or on the route in which the caregivers take daily. So for example, if you're the ones that are likely to be dropping your children, then it should be something along the way from your home to your workplace or from your workplace back. If the primary caregivers who will be sending or picking might be, for example, relatives like your parents, then it could be a center that would be on the route between your parents' house and your house or your house and your parents' house, something like that. Okay, so I want to share 2 resources with you today on how to go about, shortlisting things along your route. So one is a website called schoolpedia.com, which is, a website where you can search for schools by area and you can also see other parents' reviews. So I give you, I'll show it to you, right? This is schoolpedia.com. So basically, if you just Google for Schoolpedia, you will see that this website has, you can say where along north, south, east, west you are. You could see the reviews here by other parents of certain centers, and you can see the ratings and the dates, right? So the reviews will give you a good idea of what schools are. The second I wanted to introduce to you is called the Live SG app. Have you heard of it? Right, this is actually the newest version of a government app to consolidate essential services, and it now houses the previous ECDA preschool search portal. Okay, so it's an app. You actually have to download it, right? It says here download the app. And then once you download it and you log in, you can find the service called Search for Preschool. And you'll be able to, number one, see the list of preschools available according to postal code. Right? Number two, you can see the fees of all the centers in one, like at one glance. But you can actually bookmark up to 10 of your preferred preschool or shortlisted preschools. And number four, I think this is quite amazing. You can actually indicate your interest at these centers without calling them up one by one. Okay, so I think that for this last point, for some of the schools, the function doesn't seem to be enabled properly. But yeah, it's actually very convenient. So yeah, I think it sounds good to you, right? So don't get too excited to download it now. Continue to pay attention to this masterclass first, because we're moving on. Right. So once you have shortlisted according to the possibilities on the traveling routes from your usual day, how do you narrow it? Okay, so it's unavoidable. You got to do some desktop research. Okay, you got to visit the websites. Although yes, you have already used either the app or this Schoolpedia website to shortlist, but you do need to go into the individual schools' websites, social media pages, whether Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And also on, so Schoolpedia.com is a good place, or other parent forums that offer reviews of schools, right? To do some desktop research to get a clear sense of what people say about the school. On their own website, you usually can get things like their teaching philosophy, their approaches, their mission, that kind of thing, and ensure that those missions resonate with your family values and priorities and goals. Okay, so after doing your research for these two, usually, the other part of the research is also to do the cost, right? So while the Live SG app has the cost of the preschools, sometimes it's not always the most updated figures because preschools are allowed to adjust their fees once a year. So if it is the middle of the year or something, usually it would have been updated. But usually in the early part of the year, like now, not all the preschool fees are updated yet. So it's better to visit each individual website to actually double check the cost of the website. Okay? I mean, sorry, not the website, but the preschool center. All right. So next, we move on. Desktop research can only go so far as to give you vague ideas about, how the schools will probably be. So a visit to the centers are a must, right? Unfortunately, can't really be avoided. But, school visits just sound like, okay, I need to go through the motions and visit the school. But many parents then face the next struggle of not knowing how best to make use of the school visits. So this is really where cracking the school code is. And I'm going to break it down into two aspects. Okay, what to ask and what to observe. So the first is what questions to ask during the visits. So remember, you are there at the visit to interview the school, not to listen to their sales pitch. Okay, so before you go onto the visit, you must have discussed with your spouse, your family, on what sort of approach you prefer, which resonate with your family values that your family feels is important. So read up on different teaching or research on or basically pedagogy, right? Whether you think, for example, Montessori approach is better, child-directed learning is better, or perhaps outdoor learning is going to be important for you, or a school that emphasizes critical thinking for kids, or general knowledge, or any other emphasis on perhaps academic vigor is important to you. So these are things that you need to research and educate yourself before you go for any of these visits, or even before you shortlist, right? Like how we've described today. So our clients, as in Baby Planet SG clients who engage us to help them with evaluation of their childcare centers, we usually give them a 5-page, right, interview questionnaire to help them to actually prepare for this preschool visit. So today I want to show you snippets of this list that we give them. Okay, for example, today, um, for understanding the teaching philosophy and approaches of the school, when you're actually there, these are the questions to ask, right? So question 1 helps to understand what the school's missions are and beyond words, how they actually put it into practice. So this usually would be a question that surprises most centers, because you're asking them how is, what their philosophy is lived out in their activities and their approaches. So if they can give you clear examples of how they actually do it, then I think it is actually quite clear that, the mission and vision and philosophy are not just words, but they actually do consciously incorporate it in the daily lives of the kids. Okay, questions 2 to 4 generally help you to understand precisely what these approaches and priorities are, right? So, for example, if play is going to be important to you, then question 3 is one that you may want to dig further deeper into, right? Like what exactly constitutes play? And if you have researched well, you would also have realized that there's different definitions of play, right? You can take a very pure definition of play whereby it's really free flow play and there's no teaching along with the play. Or you can take the approach that structured play is the way to go. And so, depending on what you're looking for, listening to the answers will give you a very clear idea on whether the school is good fit or not. Okay? So, similarly for question 4, right, it's about outdoor. So a lot of schools will tell you that, yeah, we think outdoor is important, children should spend time outdoors, and then you ask this question and then they don't give you a very clear answer of like, oh, actually we give them like half an hour a day, or 1 hour a week, something like that. And you are the only one who can decide whether you are satisfied with that level of outdoor play. Okay, so the other 12 questions we have under this topic for our parents would help you to understand things like potential screen time exposure, potential manpower constraints or process weaknesses, how much flexibility there might be or there might not be, whether there's any form of personalized teaching for each child. And then help parents, or I mean, help you to understand how much language support or emphasis there might be if language support is important to you, the school's approach to discipline, and more. Right? So these are the questions to ask related to teaching philosophy and approaches that really help you to dig down to get a good sense of whether the school would really be approaching the teaching of your child in the manner which is, resonates with your family values. Okay, so next we want to ask questions about the center's processes, their teachers, and the enrollment situation. This is because operations and culture have a very big impact on the level of stress and daily activities that your child goes through. Okay, so again, some snippets of our interview questions to understand this aspect of center processes, teachers, and enrollment on the screen now. So questions 17 and 18 are both relating to turnover rates, because turnover rates are indicative of bad culture and or processes. So bad processes that could be actually very highly disruptive to, how your child adapts or learns in the center. Okay, so asking questions that go deep into things like what's the average tenure, whether you have how many assistant teachers versus teachers, right? And the tenure of each. So to share more on this point, right, assistant teachers are not fully qualified teachers. And a lot of centers actually use assistant teachers as a way to make up the ratios which are required by ECDA, or to justify to parents on their website, right? For example, they say, ECDA requirements for infant care is 1:5. For my center, it's 1:3. But when they say 1:3, maybe actually one is a main teacher and the other in the class is an assistant teacher. So then they can, maybe in a class of 8 would have a ratio 1:4 with these two teachers. So that's how it works, right? So a lot of times there's a lot of assistant teachers who are not fully qualified teachers, who make up the ratios? How qualified are assistant teachers? And ECDA doesn't have this requirement on assistant teachers. It really, some assistant teachers in certain preschools could just be literally assisting, right? Like, for example, bringing kids to the toilet or, bringing around the worksheets or the toys or whatever it is that's needed for the lesson. So those are also assistant teachers. But there are also assistant teachers who teach, right? And so there is, I would say, it's not consistent across preschools. So if this is going to be important to you, or you find out that there's going to be quite a lot of assistant teachers around, then dig deeper, right, in this question when you're interviewing the school. Okay, so question 19 and 221 would talk a lot about how much attention your child would be getting. So a lot of times, schools would like to only tell you about their teacher to student ratio. But it's good to ask questions like, how many students do you actually have altogether? And how many teachers do you have altogether? And then sometimes, depending on which time of the year you enroll, they are not at maximum capacity, but they may be at maximum capacity very quickly. And so you want to just hear the difference between, for example, like now they tell you, oh, you are enrolling for like N2 next year. N2 class is actually a very good class right now because there's only 10 students and 2 teachers. So the ratio is amazing. Then you're going to ask, right? Like what is actually the maximum capacity that you will continue taking for this N2 class? Because if I want to put my child in there and you tell me one of my big decision factors is going to be it's a fantastic class because it's so small, but 2 months later it's going to be full, right? So questions like this would help you to get an idea of what the actual ratio might be. So the next 5 questions under this category in our checklist help you to understand things like the levels of hygiene in practice, right? Everybody tells you they have high level of hygiene, but you need to ask specific questions on whether how they actually manage the hygiene things, whether it's about the kids going to the toilet, whether it's about how the meal times are done and the spaces used for meals, etc. Okay. Next, they also, the questions in this category could be the willingness of the center to accommodate or align with your preferred practices. If, the school may have a certain routine or your child may have different needs from other children their age, are you going to be able to get the center to be willing to accommodate or align with your preferences, right? So questions like this, the levels of food safety, the quality of food provided, questions would fall under here. And also some of the specific concerns for infants going to infant care center, for example, the way they handle breast milk. Right, so these would be the questions to ask relating to processes, teachers, enrollment, culture. Okay, next we talk about fees, right? So fees would be something best to ask during your visit. Why? Because fees are actually not just one number. Okay, you may find out when you ask about fees that different levels actually have different fees. So it may be good to take a long-term view, right? If this is a school you want your child to spend the next 4 years in, then the fees for this next level is not the only thing you should be concerned about, but the fees of the next few levels as well. Okay, so many centers besides the fees also charge a registration or admin fee, and this could vary very widely. And then some centers also require compulsory purchases of books or accessories. So for example, compulsory readers, whether it's for English or Chinese, and some of these books are very expensive, right? So if it's compulsory, then you just need to add that on to your consideration for cost. And then accessories like some centers require to purchase particular mattress or cot sheets or bags, right? And besides uniform. So these are all the things that really the cost could add up, or at least your initial cost could add up very high. And that would be a problem if you want to change centers later because it's like a sunk cost. Also, in addition to that, you should find out in addition to the monthly fees, you could try to probe a bit on the expected fee increases every year. Right? In Singapore, almost every school raises their fees every year. So ask for past trends, ask for their, best guess and expectations, whatever they are willing to tell you. Okay, ask about the fees for supplementary enrichment programs, because a lot of preschools actually they don't teach everything, and they often hire external vendors for supplementary enrichment programs. So if you think that you want your child to be gainfully sort of engaged, maybe after 4:30 p.m. every day, most of the time that's when like the school's teaching ends and it's only supplementary optional enrichment programs. So if you want your children to join in any of the enrichment programs on any of the days, then the fees for those programs should be added to the preschool fees in your consideration and evaluation of the cost. Okay, ask about sibling discounts if applicable to you, like you have more than one child, and ask about referral program. Okay, so normally referral program, right? If there actually is one, you could go onto forums to actually ask if there might be any parents who are presently and have children presently enrolled in the school and may be able to just refer you, because usually both of you benefit. So this is another way to just find out a lot more about whether you can save money and stuff. Okay, and some of the referral programs can be quite generous. That's why it makes sense to do it. Okay, so everyone, all right, lots to ask during your interview there. And then the next is, besides asking the questions, another important thing is really to observe, right? So what to observe? Number one is sending and picking logistics. So when we talk about logistics, it's really not just about proximity to home, right? As you do this visit, try to mimic what your typical travel route will be like. So note down the travel time, okay, and calculate whether that makes sense at all for your daily. Because you got to do this pickup and sending daily, right? So consider whether that makes sense. Next, when you arrive at the center, note, right, like where the center is actually located, ground floor versus needing to wait for a lift, needing to go up an escalator or something like that. Consider what you would actually be doing on your everyday. So, for example, if you're going to use a pram every day to send your child to school, um, but on your visit day, you're not, right? So you've got to imagine that you have a pram and then you're going up, for example, this escalator. Does it make sense? Or do you have to wait for the lift? Then try out the lift and see, the waiting time for the lift every day, that kind of thing, right? If you drive, then note whether there is drop off and pick up points that is actually convenient, that your car doesn't have to park properly, for example. Or if you need to park, then take note of the grace period or ask questions about the grace period, whether you're going to actually make it or do you have to pay parking every day, right? The costs really do add up. If it's $3 or something like that, just to drop and pick up every day, that really adds up. Okay. How sheltered it is from the elements. So that goes without saying. But again, remember that your daily sending and picking is going to be whether it's rain or shine. So the day of the visit is not only the day to consider. Okay, so you've got to see whether, okay, if your helper is going to be the one who will be sending and picking, is there a sheltered route all the way that she can push a pram all the way to, that kind of thing. Also, when you're asking about the fees, you may want to ask about the late picking policy. Most childcare centers do impose a late picking policy, and some can be more stringent than the others. Some may try to pick up clues, right? Whether they're going to actually pressure you to pick early. While there may not be a fine until 7 p.m., some schools like to tell parents that they have to pick up by 6, for example. And if that is something that is going to be not practical for your life, then that is something as a red flag for you. Okay, so that's all for sending picking logistics. Next, look at the classrooms, right? So when you're getting your school tour, take a good observation on the classrooms, whether they are actually separate soundproof classrooms next to each other or they are partitions. Okay, so different whether a soundproof classroom has its advantages, disadvantages compared to partitions. So for example, if Montessori approach and learning and child-led learning is going to be very important to you, usually these centers have partitions because they want to make everything very accessible and low reaching for the child to, basically take charge of their own learning. However, kids are actually very easily distracted. So it may be something for you to observe, right? The noise levels, if it's a partition room, versus like how soundproof, for example, separate classrooms are. Is it actually very stuffy? Are there no windows? That kind of thing. All right. Then next for classrooms is actually take a good look around at the variety or the quality of the children's work on display. So why? Firstly, I mean, if they are all very good quality, you may be quite impressed, right? By maybe they actually do very fun and engaging things with your children, so it looks great. But as you observe the quality, right, ask yourself, does it make sense whether like if you were in an N2 classroom and you see beautiful, intricate artwork around, you should really ask yourself, could the children all have done this? Or did the teachers help? So there are some centers whereby the teachers are very involved with helping the children complete their work. If that is something that resonates with your family values, great. But if it is something that actually makes you concerned because it seems like the child doesn't actually get to learn or lead their own learning, then that would be something to consider. So look around, right, at the quality of the children's work on display. The third thing is to, especially important if you care about Montessori preferences or child-led learning, is the accessibility of the learning or playing items to the children. So are they all locked up in a cupboard somewhere, out of sight, out of reach? Or are they all, very freely available? What kinds of things are they allowed to reach anytime they want? Right. So that gives you a very good indication again on the pedagogy, the approach in the teaching. Okay, next would be finally the culture, right, of the center. What to observe during the visit? How do you tell the culture? Look at the kids. Okay, kids never lie. Okay, so do they look bored? Do they look engaged? Do they look distracted? Look at their expressions, their posture, their participation in the class. Okay, if you have the chance, try to see if you can observe any interactions between the principal and the teachers. The interactions on how the tone and the body language is actually a good indicator of what the culture at the school actually is. Okay, you will probably get the opportunity to see the interaction between the teachers and the students, right? So listen to the words being used in the classroom, listen to the tones used by the teachers, and basically see how lessons are actually conducted. Okay, the last thing I wanted to highlight today is actually to observe the percentage of kids in school uniform. Okay, I know this is not a very common thing, but uniform wearing is an indicator of number one, discipline, number two, identity, pride, and culture of the school. So if there is actually a very strong school culture, you may also see uniforms among the teachers. You may also see, the kids donning the uniform as one indication of how much like school identity that really is. All right. So that comes to the end actually of all the things I wanted to prepare and share.
I had a thought. When I was looking for childcare, it wasn't at the 6-month mark, it was a little bit further down the line. So we started looking around 1 year to put in for 18 months. So we found that at that age, certain preschools were very happy, and in some instances, not all, but in some, encouraged us to bring our daughter with us, which felt wonderful because we had that kind of very immediate, like you say, children don't lie. We had that immediate, we could see in her face, did she like walking through the door? Did she, did she engage with the teachers? Did the teachers engage with her? Did the teaching assistants, engage? And it also gave me the opportunity to go a little bit behind the scenes, like even down to oh, I think she needs the toilet, can we go to the toilet? Like, it gave me that extra legitimate reason to literally go behind the curtain sometimes, and oh, she seems to be looking down at that toy, that book, is it okay if I go and get it, and things like that. So I don't know whether that's a tactic that, is a good one to employ or whether I was just being cheeky, but I was able to use her as the excuse for a lot of things and really get that kind of immediate feedback.
Yes, thanks very much for sharing that, Kathy. Indeed, I think that could be a very good way to also get another angle of feedback, right? So not just your thoughts, but actually your child's responses. So normally I actually do this as a second visit. So
Yeah.
for the schools, right, after I do the first visit and I've gone back to evaluate and shortlist, let's say I have a clear winner, a clear choice, then I may or may not do the second visit. But if I have like, two or three that I am still very seriously considering and wondering what might be better, because they each have their strengths and weaknesses, then I might ask for a second visit and I would usually opt to bring my child along then. Because that first, that very clear preference would actually be seen by you very, very quickly.
I often find it quite hard on the websites to really get a true feeling for where their curriculum and pedagogy lie. Like it's almost like they don't want to tag themselves as Reggio Emilio. And I'm like, Are they similar? Aren't they similar? They sound a bit similar. I think they're there. Um, so, do you have any tips on how, when we're reading the websites, in particular doing that first shortlist, that we can start to get a feel where they fit in terms of curriculum and styles?
Yeah. So I think that's another great question. Um, if certain styles are actually going to be very important to you, then usually you should kind of research deeper into that particular thing. So for example, Reggio Emilia or Montessori, the better thing is for you to truly research into it to understand the heart of which aspect of that approach is going to be the most important to you. Because most approaches would have one or two key underlying approaches that differentiate it from others. Whether it's, for example, the child-led learning, whether it's, the respect, or whether it is the particular openness or creativity or critical thinking. So those would be the anchor points that would make it the approach that you are most concerned about. So as you read the website, they usually would not align themselves so clearly to one, but they would usually describe certain approaches which would tell you or give you a good sense of which direction they're heading more towards. And so that would be your best indicators. I totally agree that you will never be able to just hear someone or read a website that says we are 100%, this, right? We are trained by maybe the founder of this methodology herself, that kind of thing. So that usually doesn't exist, I think, in Singapore, unless the approach is a very niche one. So, for example, outdoor school, that kind of thing. So you may see a lot more in some of these niche areas that are clearer. But in most of the others, you will have to discern, read in between the lines, if you may say so. Okay? Advice for shift work. Okay, so shift work is one of the difficult issues I think that our government hasn't truly figured out, because right now it is standardized as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. only, which means that if both parents are working shifts, then sometimes it may become difficult if both parents work night shift, right? Because your child will be home from 7 p.m. onwards. So I would say the best way is to really work hand in hand with your employer to try and coordinate early, right? Like we'll always try to stick to a fix. Like, if I say one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I will always do the night shift. Then the other 2 days, I cannot do the night shift because I need to allow my spouse to do that. So the best way is really to coordinate with your employers to ensure that at least 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. timings plus minus 1 hour, one of you will be able to not be on shift. Okay, so MOE preschool. It's a good question. MOE preschool is now quite a recent trend for a few years now, whereby it is the government's way, I think, of trying to give options besides privately run childcare centers to have MOE preschools. So normally MOE preschools, one of the big difference is that they have a very strict curriculum time versus childcare centers. Privately run childcare centers, they have a like timetable where all lessons start by around 9 o'clock and then all lessons end at around 4:30. But then you are free to send and pick your child any time of the day, right? There will always be someone who is able to let your child in or let you pick up your child at any time of the day, no questions asked. Whereas in the MOE preschool, they tend to follow a little bit more strict structure and regime compared to these private preschools. So for example, if you do not send your child, or rather school starts at 8:30 a.m., means school starts at 8:30 a.m., right? If you are late, you actually cannot come to school that day. It's quite similar to primary school, right? Primary school, 7:30, flag raising, and then everybody starts lesson. If you just decide to stroll into school at 10 a.m., you will just not be allowed in, right? So same thing for MOE preschool. But this is not the case for private childcare centers, because private childcare centers, you can stroll in at 10 a.m., they will still let you in. Okay, so that's a big difference. In terms of preparing your child for primary school, I think you will find a very, very wide variety amongst all the preschools. So if this is your priority, as I said, for your family, if this is your priority, then look for a school which will prepare your child academically for primary school. So we offer some options to parents to help you with your childcare selection process or even your care arrangement process. So, just now I had the slide which has 6 different childcare options. So I help you to go through a in-depth interview to understand your family's priorities and needs in order to evaluate which of the options make the most sense for you. And then, so I will highlight specific areas to look out for that you may not have considered in your evaluation of these options. And then I have specific things. Let's say if you decide on childcare as the way, then there is the option to either ask me to interview the schools with you or interview the schools for you. So it's a full outsource, that kind of thing. So I do that. Or if you decide, for example, that a helper would be a way to go, I can also do the same thing. So we have questionnaires that we can provide to you or do it with you, right? Interview helpers as well as evaluate helpers on your behalf. And then finally, like give you the last 2 or 3 shortlists and our evaluation of it, that kind of thing. So we do offer that as a service. You can check that out on our website.
I think we've covered a lot, Ling, and I'm absolutely certain people are going to be going back and picking up those questions, those snippets of questions that I think people are going to find so helpful to have up their sleeve when the time comes to do those, school tours and asking those interviews. And I think the pertinent point that I got when you were discussing that part was the fact that it is you interviewing the school, not you listening to their sales pitch. So making sure you pull out of them the information that you want that's going to make you and breathe that sigh of relief and make you happy. Come on, like we want our children to go to places where they're going to thrive, where they're going to smile, where they're excited to go when they have a holiday and they're telling you on holiday that they're missing their friends, that they're missing their teacher, that they want to go back to school, that they're really, really thriving and enjoying that. And I think those questions really help parents pull that cultural angle out to truly understand that. And like you say, whether it's the first trip or the second trip, taking their child with them, getting a feel for the vibe with their child in the space, I think is that kind of final testament as to whether it's that second home that you're looking for, really. So with that, I think I have to say a very, very big thank you to Ling. Thank you ever so much for your time. We really, really appreciate everything you do with the Pregnant and Popped Network So thank you. Ling is also very active and very, very helpful on the Pregnant and Popped Village WhatsApp group. If you aren't already on there, then please do join. You can reach out to us with more details on that, but that's a free support group on WhatsApp where we try and answer questions as timely as we possibly can. And the last thing I have to do is thank everyone sitting at home. Thank you so, so much for being here. Without you, these masterclasses would be meaningless, and you keep us going and we keep doing them for you. So thank you so much. And with that, I bid everyone a good evening, and please sleep well, and I will hopefully speak to you and see you all very soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.